I put off reading Revan by Drew Karpyshyn for quite a while because I just thought that the Knights of the Old Republic games just couldn't be topped, right? Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2 are masterpieces. They are arguably the best Star Wars games ever made. And when I saw this Revan novel, I just felt like at best it will be like a decent epilogue to the first game. Man, was I wrong. This novel, Revan, by Drew Karpyshyn, is just, it's a masterpiece. I absolutely love it. My only criticism is this. I think titling the book Revan is misleading because the book isn't solely about Revan. It is basically split three ways with three characters. Revan, Scourge, and Mitra, who is from the Knights of the Old Republic game, the sequel, part 2. And the thing that this book does masterfully is that it weaves both games together. It weaves the stories from both games, and it comes with this epic conclusion. It ties it all together, and I really wasn't expecting that going into reading this book. Again, I thought that at best this book would be like an epilogue, but it really takes the story from both games and it weaves it together into this epic conclusion that could be bittersweet for some. And I thought that the book was well written. It was highly engaging. I really enjoyed it. And I was really surprised at how much of a page turner it was. Seeing Revan grapple with his fractured identity and the moral weight of his past actions, it was such a compelling character study. And it was absolutely fascinating how the book explores the nuance between being a traitor and being a hero, and how the Jedi Council's decision to wipe Revan's memory raises serious ethical questions about the agency and the ends justifying the means. It really mirrors that debate in the prequels, specifically regarding the Jedi's arrogance and detachment. So, it was a great read. I absolutely loved it. And the character of Scourge is a complex character, right? And Scourge is basically caught in the crossfire between his superior, who is called Nerys, Darth Nerys' machinations. And and also Bastila makes an appearance, and Bastila is married to Revan. However, she kind of gets left behind, but there's a reason. And it's because Bastila and Revan have a child, and she has to look over that child. And she's basically carrying the weight of the future, while Revan basically pursues the Emperor of the Sith Empire. And like I previously stated, this book is split three ways between Revan, Scourge, and Mitra. And I thought this was an outstanding read. So let's begin with this in-depth analysis and commentary of Revan, a novel of the Old Republic. So the story opens with Revan having nightmares about a storm-covered planet. And Revan is reflecting on being a traitor and a hero. And you have to remember what went down in the Knights of the Old Republic game, the first one. So basically, Revan, he was on the dark side. He was aligned with Darth Malak. And he basically switched sides, came back to the light side, and saved the Republic from Darth Malak and the Starforge. And if you haven't played that game, you really owe it to yourself to play that game. You can also go ahead and check out my videos. I did a review of that game, broke it down into like 4 or 5 different videos as I was playing along, as I was progressing through the game, and I basically recapped the entire story. But it was an epic story that involve the Star Forge and the Rakatan Empire, the Rakatan Infinite Empire, who are basically this ancient and cruel civilization who are just trying to conquer the entire galaxy. And if you want more lore regarding the Rakatan Empire outside of the Knights of the Republic game, I recommend you read the Dawn of the Jedi comic books from Dark Horse. But back to Revan. So Revan is recollecting how he saved the Republic, and initially he led an army of Jedi against the Mandalorians in the Outer Rim and returned as conquerors, desiring to destroy the Republic. So there's kind of a mystery going on as to what compelled Revan and Malik to go. Basically, they went out there to fight against the Mandalorians as Jedi, only to return as Sith or agents of the dark side, trying to destroy the Republic. And you have to keep in mind that Revan's memories are fragmented. He can't remember everything. And this is going to play a pivotal role in this story, Revan's fractured memories. Now, the Jedi basically captured Revan and erased his memories to use as a weapon against his master Malik. And Revan also had to redeem his wife Bastila from the dark side. So Bastila was the central character in the Knights of the Old Republic game. I absolutely loved her character. And she's one of the best female Jedi in Star Wars lore. Excellent character. And when Revan came back from the light side, he also had to redeem his wife. Now, Bastila believes that the Jedi erasing Revan's memory was wrong. That was something that they shouldn't have done, that they crossed the line. And Revan believes it was more than the Star Forge during the war with the Mandalorians in the Outer Rim that corrupted him to the dark side. So he feels it intuitively, that it was more than the Star Forge and the details of the Knights of the Old Republic game, the first game, that motivated him to turn to the dark side, that corrupted him. And we're going to find out about what this missing puzzle piece was that motivated him to turn to the dark side. And Revan believes that these nightmares are linked to this. Now, we switch over to Lord Scourge, who is a Sith, a pure-blood Sith. So it's important to distinguish between Sith, like, say, Emperor Palpatine and Darth Maul, and pure-blood Sith, they have, like, their color of their skin is red, and they have these tendons that hang from their face, and they're pure-blood Sith. And you can find more lore in regards to the pure-blood Sith in the Tales of the Jedi comic books that were released by Dark Horse in the 1990s. Primarily the first 2 volumes, which were The Sith Empire and the Fall of the Sith Empire, which are fascinating reads. So if we go chronologically as far as the Dark Horse comic books that talk about the origins of the Jedi and the Sith, you would first read the Dawn of the Jedi, and then you would read the Tales of the Jedi comic books. So again, it's important to distinguish between pure blood Sith and Sith who have been initiated by the teachings of the dark side. And this is going to have an important role to play in this story. So on the planet Dromun Kaas, which is a Sith planet, Lord Scourge, who is a pure-blood Sith, is a newly anointed Lord of the Sith. And his presence has been requested by Darth Neris, who is also a pure-blood Sith as well. And basically, he's been summoned by the Emperor to find out who is trying to assassinate Neris. So Neris is only summoning Lord Scourge on the behest of the Emperor. And basically, somebody tried to assassinate Nereus. And it's important to note that Nereus is a member of the Emperor's Dark Council. And Scourge is tested by Nereus by being attacked by a bunch of mercenaries, and Scourge takes out the mercenaries and proves himself. Now, Scourge is assigned to the planet Halion, where a droid that tried to assassinate Nereus is manufactured. So he's trying to put together these clues and all this. And he is going to be accompanied on this mission by Setchel, who is the servant to Nereus. And the reason why Setchel is going to accompany Scourge is because Setchel is a master at slicing and hacking into the computer networks. And he's basically, his role is to find out who bought the assassination droid that attempted to kill Nereus. And again, it's important to note that there is a rivalry between pureblood Sith and human Sith going on. Now back to Revan. Revan meets with the Mandalorian Canderous on Coruscant. And Canderous was an important character in the Knights of the Republic game, the first one. And they discuss Revan's nightmares. And they discuss what started the Mandalorian War against the Republic. And basically, Revan is trying to piece together his fragmented memories. And Canderous tells Revan that Mandalore, the Ultimate, is the one that declared war against the Republic. Now, Mandalore, the Ultimate, is the leader of the Mandalorians. Now, Revan defeated the Mandalore in battle and took his helmet to prevent another leader from claiming leadership of the Mandalorians. Now, this helmet has gone missing. And the Mandalorians fight amongst themselves as a result of not having a clearly distinct leader. So they fought amongst themselves, and as a result, they lost the war against the Jedi. Now, Revan can't remember why Malak and he declared war against the Republic after defeating the Mandalorians. And he speculates that it's linked to this planet that he keeps having dreams about. It's basically, they're basically dreams about this storm planet where there's lots of storms and lightning, and he's trying to piece it all together, in other words. And he speculates that this planet is in the unknown regions beyond Mandalorian space. Now, Revan asks Canderous to find out more about Mandalore the Ultimate for him in an attempt to piece together his fragmented memories. Now, as Revan visits the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, he is resented by the other Jedi for instigating the Mandalorian Wars, and he's especially despised by some in the Republic for killing millions of soldiers in the war with Malak. And this is one of those things where it's kind of like, I don't know, storytelling wise, it's a little difficult to swallow, because here you have this Jedi or this former Sith who is basically responsible for the death of millions, and he's basically welcomed back to the Jedi, and it's kind of like, I don't know. I feel like at that point, when you're responsible for the death of millions, you're beyond redemption, in my opinion. And there's another character in Star Wars lore, a character that's from the post Return of the Jedi, and that would be Kip Duron, who basically killed an entire planet and all its inhabitants with the Sun Crusher, and then oops, he decides to become a Jedi again. And it's like, okay, you're forgiven. So those kind of things are just for me, it's really hard to swallow from a moral standpoint. And it doesn't destroy the story. This is kind of a nitpick. It's just something that I want to point out. And I could totally understand the sentiment of people in the Jedi Order and people in the Republic who despise Revan for basically being responsible for the death of millions of soldiers in the war with Malak. Now, the Jedi, it's important to note that the Jedi don't approve of Revan's marriage to Bastila. Again, because, they believe in, they don't believe in attachment. And they believe that attachment leads to the dark side. But Revan argues that his love is what saved Bastila from the dark side when she was corrupted by Malak, and as a result, helped defeat Malak. And this kind of ties into the original trilogy and the prequels as well, because the Jedi were basically a bunch of emotionless assholes in the prequels, and you can say that that's what corrupted or confused Anakin and made him all conflicted and made him prone to be his feelings to be exploited by Palpatine to turn to the dark side. But ultimately, it was love that saved the galaxy, because it was love from a son for his father that saved the galaxy. It's because Luke Skywalker showed love for his father, Anakin, that Vader was able to, in turn, also feel compassion and love for his son and destroy the Emperor. And that's what basically saved the galaxy from the Sith, right? And fuck the sequel trilogy. I don't give a shit about no fucking Rey and no fucking First Order bullshit. So fuck that crap. That shit, I don't give a fuck who you are. That shit did not happen. It's a bunch of bullshit. A bunch of Kathleen Kennedy fan fiction bullshit. That's all it is. Now, I want to read to you a page from this book that I thought was really thought-provoking in regards to a Jedi and love and attachment and all that stuff. So here I'm reading. They taught that love begat jealousy. So we're talking about the Jedi. They taught that love begat jealousy, which led to the dark side. But Revan had seen its redemptive powers firsthand. It was his love that had brought Bastila back to the light. Their emotional bond had wrought salvation for both of them. Denying or attempting to utterly control emotion, Revan felt, was a fool's game. Jealousy was actually the result of ill-prepared Jedi being overwhelmed by feelings they had never learned to face. This is kind of foreshadowing Anakin, right? Revan believed Jedi could be taught to use positive emotions like love and happiness to strengthen their connection to the Force in the same way that hatred and anger gave power to those who followed the dark side. So again, this is foreshadowing Anakin's story. And I love that. I love that it foreshadows Anakin's story. It acknowledges why the Jedi suck in this era. I like the Jedi a lot more in the Tales of the Jedi era, where they were allowed to marry and have relationships and things like that. But to its credit, it's there as a plot device. It's there to tell a story. And it just shows you that the Jedi became too orthodox and became too rigid and became almost inhuman. And that emotion is okay. And I like Revan's outlook on this. And I thought this was a great critique and a great point in the story and a great theme that is being explored here. Now, Revan is looking for his former comrade, Mitra, who is a pivotal character in the Knights of the Old Republic 2 game. So Revan is looking for her. And she fought the Mandalorians in the war at the Battle of Malachor. And she used the mass shadow generator that vaporized the entire surface of the planet. And for those who love the Rebels cartoon that came out, if you remember Rebels Season 2, basically paid tribute to this event. If you remember when Ezra and the Rebel crew, Kanan, they went to Malachor, and you saw all the remnants of the planet, all those beings who are basically frozen. It's almost like Pompeii in Rome, or when the volcano erupted and the ash fell on the citizens, and they basically got fossilized like that. It kind of was reminded me of that. And the reason why that happened is because Mitra basically used the mass shadow generator that vaporized the entire surface of the planet and its inhabitants. So you can see that in Star Wars Rebels, and I love that. I love how it all ties together, even though over time I've kind of become less of a fan of Star Wars Rebels, but nevertheless, that was an epic homage or an epic tribute to the game and the major events of that game that took place. Now, as a result, she was banished by the Jedi and basically exiled. Now, Revan is in the Jedi archives, and an archivist named Atris is really bitter towards Revan and explains that Mitra felt the deaths of the Mandalorians, and it was too much to bear, and as a result, Mitra cut herself off from the Force permanently. So this is why Revan can't find Mitra in the Force. He can't sense her, and why he's having difficulty locating her. And Atris, the archivist, accuses Revan of abandoning Mitra to the unknown regions with Malak. But Revan, he can't even remember what's going on, so he's kind of taking what Atris is telling him with a grain of salt. Now, we jump back to Scourge, who suspects that Setchel is trying to get him killed on his mission to Halion by not telling him about the droids that are basically attacking him and the impending explosions at the base. And ultimately, they were able to recover the files. So the files that Setchel and Scourge recovered say that the purchasers of the assassin droids that tried to kill Neris belong to the Separatists. And these Separatists are from the planet Bostherda. And basically the Separatists on this planet are trying to free their world from the Sith Empire. Now, Scourge, Setchel, and a group of Sith soldiers, they are assigned to go to Bostherda to kill the Separatists and see who they are working with. So that's the mission that Scourge takes on after he goes to Halion. Now, jumping back to Revan, Canderous, the Mandalorian, tells Revan that the Mandalorians are gathering on the planet Rakide, and they're looking for the Mandalore's mask so that they can so they can basically have a new leader. And they think that Revan and Malak hid the mask there. That's why they are meeting up on the planet Rakide. Now, Canderous and Revan, they plan to go there with Bastila. However, Bastila, at this point in the story, tells Revan that she is pregnant. And Bastila decides not to go to the planet Rakide and join Revan and Canderous on this mission. And it's important to note that she doesn't want Revan to go on this mission either. She doesn't want Revan to go because she feels that Revan has done enough to serve the Republic. Ultimately, he saved the Republic. And she's like, you've done enough. Stop. But Revan knows that he can't just sit by and be idle because there's something incomplete about him. His fragmented memories are basically bothering him. He knows that there's more that he has to do. He feels it in the Force. Now, Revan, he also wants Bastila to stay behind because she's pregnant. But he convinces her, he basically convinces Bastila that he has to go. And he has to go for their child's sake, for the future of their child, to defeat the darkness that threatens future generations. And this point is going to play a pivotal role in the overall arc of his story. Now, on Bastarda, Setchel and the security captain, Murtog, defy Scourge's orders. And Scourge, as a result of them defying his orders, he starts to deliberate on whether they are conspiring to kill him, conspiring to take him out. So that's one thing about the Sith that we all know, that they love doing this whole Machiavellian backstabbing stuff. So Scourge is always second guessing the motives of everybody around him and his superiors, whether he's being manipulated or whether they're trying to kill him. And what happens is Setchel says that him defying Scourge's orders was necessary in order to prevent a data loss. And they find out in a fragmented communication that another Darth named Darth Zedrix, a human Sith, is behind the assassination attempt against Darth Neris. Now, Neris doesn't want to tell the Emperor that Zedrix was basically assassinated by Scourge. So basically, Scourge kills Darth Zedrix on behalf of Darth Neris. But Neris doesn't want the Emperor to know this. Now, Scourge doesn't feel confident enough to defeat a Sith Lord, but Neris says that Zedrix is weak because he is human. So this is before Scourge ultimately kills Darth Zedrix, before he undertakes this mission. And yes, he ultimately ends up killing Darth Zedrix, but initially he doesn't feel like he's strong enough. But ultimately, Scourge accepts the task because he wants to ascend in the ranks of the Sith. So then you have the battle, Scourge versus Darth Zedrix, and Zedrix uses Force Lightning, which depletes his strength. And he's trying to look strong, he's trying to look confident, but when he uses Force Lightning, it depletes him, and he's weak, and he tries to convince Scourge that Neris, Darth Neris, is basically playing him for a fool, manipulating him, and Scourge ultimately ends up killing him and chopping off his head. And he was, this character, Darth Zedrix, he was no contest for Scourge. Scourge was infinitely more powerful. Now, Revan has a dream at this point about him and Darth Malak on the planet Rekad. And Revan hides his identity among the Mandalorians when he gets there. And he wants to hide his identity because you have to remember that Revan and Malak led the war against the Mandalorians and defeated them. So of course he's going to hide his identity. But you know what? You can tell from miles away that the Mandalorians are going to find out who he really is. So it kind of was like, okay, when I read this, I was like, how long is it going to take for the Mandalorians to find out? We know they're going to find out that it's Revan, and we know once they find out that there's going to be a conflict, and ultimately that's what happens. So Revan tries to hide his identity among the Mandalorians since he was ultimately responsible for their downfall. Now it's here at this point in the story that we are introduced to Candaris's wife, the clan leader Vila. And basically Revan tells Candaris' wife that he knows where the Mask of Mandalore is. It's at the Twin Spears in another clan's territory, so it's a little problematic. Now, this means that there is likely to be bloodshed. Revan says he knows where the mask is because he has access to Republic records. So that's how he was able to find out or basically go on this hunch. Now, during battle, Revan uses his lightsaber, revealing that he is a Jedi. So already you can conclude that Vila and her clan can conclude that this is Revan. And it's already a little suspicious because when Candaris introduces this mysterious figure under a false name, and then he doesn't mention that he's a Jedi, then all of a sudden he's busting out the lightsaber and showing that he's a Jedi. I mean, you can already conclude that that they're not being forthcoming. And you already know what's coming around the corner, that they're going to find out, or that they already know that this is Revan. And it's going to be problematic because Revan is the one that basically waged war against them. So during battle, he uses the lightsaber, revealing that he's a Jedi. And we already know that this is going to be problematic. Now, jumping back to Scourge interrogates and tortures Setchel. And this was such a great scene because Setchel comes across like this sniveling little weasel, and you just want Scourge to just snuff him out of existence for some reason. At least that's how I felt. And Scourge really tortures him. So the pureblood Siths, they have these little tendons that hang from their face, and Scourge just starts cutting them off. I mean, and it's torturous. And he learns through the torture of Setchel that Darth Neris did indeed use him. That there was no assassination against her. There was no assassination attempt. That it was all staged. And Neris intervenes during this segment where Scourge is torturing Setchel. And she intervenes and tells Scourge that the Emperor is the true enemy and must be stopped because he wants to attack the Republic. And that the Sith will lose, just like Naga Shadow did in the Tales of the Jedi comic books by Dark Horse. And if you ever read those comics or you're not familiar with them, you will know, or I'll let you know right now, that Naga Shadow had this vision of conquest. So initially, the Sith Empire were basically on the other side of the galaxy, and this is right around the Hyperspace Wars, or this was the Hyperspace Wars, and basically hyperspace travel, it becomes a new thing. The Sith find out that the Republic exists, and then Naga Shadow wants to wage war against the Republic. But the Republic they're just too powerful. And the Sith they're kind of primitive in their technology, even though they have the power of the dark side. And you have to remember that the Republic have Jedi. They have lots of Jedi. So basically, Darth Neris doesn't want another failure like Naga Shadow had when he attacked the Republic. And it was a devastating loss to the Sith, and Darth Neris doesn't want that to happen again. She doesn't want there to be a compromising of the Sith's existence and their empire. Now, Darth Neris says that Darth Zedrix, who Scourge killed, was an essential sacrifice that had to be made. And it had to be made because it needed to make Neris not seem like part of the separatist movement. So there is a separatist movement, and Darth Neris is a part of it. But she wanted to deflect attention away. She wanted to deflect the Emperor's attention away from herself. So she basically sacrificed Darth Zedrix and had Scourge basically be her errand boy and kill Darth Zedrix on her behalf. So essentially, Scourge was not summoned to investigate any assassination by against Darth Nereus. Scourge was summoned by the Emperor. So as a result of this, Darth Nereus had to improvise in order to throw the Emperor off her trail. Now, Darth Nereus wants Scourge to tell the Emperor that Darth Zedrix was a separatist and part of the assassination attempt. Then Darth Nereus tells Scourge the Emperor must be stopped because he has learned the secret to immortality on a lost planet called Nathema. And Nereus wants Scourge to join the separatists, to join this movement. And basically, she is going to take Scourge to Nathema, this planet where the Emperor learned immortality, in order to show him the depravity, the madness of the Emperor. And what I mean is that the Emperor basically lost his mind, and basically the cost for immortality is just it's not worth it. It's insane. And basically Darth Nereus is like, you have to see it to believe it. I can't tell you. Therefore, she's going to take Scourge to this planet in order to show him the cost of immortality, and that it's not worth it, essentially. Now, jumping back to Revan, Revan and the Mandalorians find a burial chamber of an exiled Sith Lord. And it's here where Revan has this flashback of the Mandalore dying. And when I say the Mandalore, I'm talking about the leader of the Mandalorians. So in this Sith chamber, Revan has this flashback of the Mandalore dying. And as he dies, he tells Revan that the Mandalorians were used and betrayed by the Sith. This was before Malak and Revan ultimately were turned to the dark side. Now, with the Mandalore's last dying words, it confirmed the existence of the Sith for Revan and Malak. And Revan ultimately finds the helmet of the Mandalore. And he also finds a Datacron, which is kind of like a holocron. And this Datacron is from a Sith Lord called Darth or Lord Dramith from the planet Nathema in the chamber. Now remember that Nathema is the planet that Scourge and Nereus are going to in order to see the cost for immortality. This is where they're going to see the depravity, the madness of the Emperor. So it's right around here where we can see all the threads of this story starting to come together for the most part. Because up to this point, it's been kind of Scourge on this side of the story, Revan on this side of the story. And as you read along, you know it's going to tie together somehow. Somehow, these two are going to cross paths, and now we are starting to see the threads come together. It's starting to all be weaved together right now. Now, this Sith that is from the planet Nathema is called Lord Dramith. Now, Lord Dramith came to this planet that they're on, Rakide, after being overthrown by another Sith Lord called Vitiate. Now, there's a little bit of a interruption in the story right here. And this is when Vila, Candaris's wife, basically conveys her fury at the presence of Revan, who, again, is responsible for the Mandalorians' defeat. And Vila is furious that Revan even touched the Mask of Mandalore. And she basically declares that she knows that he is really Darth Revan, or Revan. That he is the one that defeated the Mandalorians. And she's not happy about this at all. And Canderous pleads for peace. And this is where it gets really, really exciting and a little tragic, because Canderous is forced to kill his own wife. And this was epic. I mean, this is epic storytelling. And this is why I absolutely love this book. This book does not hold back or pull back any punches when it comes to the drama. And I absolutely love it. And at this point in the story, Darth Revan remembers what happened with the Battle of Mandalore. 2 years before the Mandalorians declared war on the Republic, he was approached by a pure-blood Sith. And when I say he, I'm not talking about Revan, I'm talking about the Mandalore. The leader of the Mandalorians was approached by a pure-blood Sith who was a descendant of Lord Vitiate, and convinced him to search for Draymith's tomb to give the remains to his master. Now, in exchange, the descendant told the Mandalore a vision of the Mandalorians overthrowing the Republic. Now, the descendant used the dark side in order to manipulate Mandalore the Great. And this is kind of a foreshadowing of what happened with Darth Malak and Darth Revan. So it recontextualizes the Knights of the Old Republic game, where, if my memory serves me correctly, you think that Darth Malak and Darth Revan are basically trying to conquer the galaxy, and they're Sith or Darksiders because of their own volition. But you can kind of see that the Sith are manipulating other characters into doing their own bidding. And that's what happened with Mandalore the Great. Now, Revan decides to go to Nathema, and Canderous decides to be the new Mandalorian leader. Now, they got the helm. He has the helmet. So it's his destiny at this point. And it kind of felt like this is where the story was going to go anyway. So Canderous decides to be the new leader of Mandalore since he has the helmet and all that. So Revan and Canderous part ways. Now, jumping back with what's going on with Scourge and Darth Nerys, Nerys tells Scourge of the Emperor's past. And this is where things get really interesting. And this is where it really recontextualizes Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2, the video games. Because when I played those games, I really felt like they were their own thing. But this book, it ties it all together. And it shows you that there is a much greater threat behind the curtain. And I absolutely loved it. I really did. I really loved how this book recontextualized the two games, tied them together, and all that. So here is the Emperor's past that is conveyed to Scourge. The Emperor was born with the name Tenebrae, and he was born with eyes as black as the abyss, and the book literally says that the Emperor never cried as an infant and spoke like an adult. And this kind of reminded me of Dune, like the character Alia from Dune, if you ever read that book. And his mother had an affair with the Sith Lord Draymith, who ruled her. the Emperor ended up killing his own parents. Now, Tenebrae eventually conquered every village on his planet. And he defeated his father Drameth when he was only 10 years old. The Lord of all Sith, Marco Ragnos, made him a Sith Lord and renamed him Lord Vitiate. And he gave him the planet Nathema to rule. Now, after the Hyperspace Wars, and again, that is basically the Tales of the Jedi, the first 2 volumes of Tales of the Jedi, where Naga Shadow and Ludo Kresh are basically fighting amongst each other while simultaneously fighting the Republic. So after the Hyperspace War, the Emperor invited the defeated Sith to Nathema to participate in a ritual of sorcery, which ended up killing all the Sith and all the living beings. And this ritual made Vitiate immortal. He became the Emperor Eternal. Now, Scourge and Nereus arrive on the planet Nathema, and they can feel that the Force is absent. The planet is completely void of life. It is nothing but lifelessness, an empty void. And because of this, Scourge agrees to join Darth Nereus in her quest to defeat the Emperor. And I just want to say that I absolutely love this. The political machinations on the Sith side of things they're just absolutely ruthless. Nereus playing Scourge like a fiddle, using his ambition to ascend the ranks of the Sith to clean up her loose ends with Darth Zedrix, is classic Sith treachery. It basically illustrates this whole survivalist dog-eat-dogs philosophy of the Sith. And it's fascinating that she frames her conspiracy as a necessity for Sith survival, comparing the Emperor's plans to Naga Shadow's disastrous failure. She's essentially using the fear of extinction to recruit a weapon, and that weapon is Scourge, right? But she's still lying to him about the assassination plot and all that. But we know that's BS at this point. And, there's something ironic because she accuses the Emperor of dooming them, but she's manipulating Scourge just as thoroughly. And the backstory of the Emperor is absolutely chilling. It is some absolutely dark lore right there. A child who never cries, speaks like an adult, and kills his own father at 10 years old. It totally underscores the idea that from birth, he was an aberration of nature, an abomination, a void of the Force. The ritual on Nathema to achieve immortality by consuming all life on the planet. It's a horrifying concept, and it perfectly explains why Nathema is a void in the Force. It's a planet that was literally eaten alive just to sustain one man's ego. It's a stark contrast to the Jedi view of the Force as a living, connecting web. Vitiate treats it as a resource to be strip-mined. It makes him a far more terrifying villain than just a guy with a lightsaber who wants to conquer the galaxy just to be a Darksider. And that's what I mean. It recontextualizes the first 2 games, the Knights of the Republic games. I mean, in those games, you basically have Darth Malak, Darth Revan, Darth Malak's the bad guy. You think that's all there is, but then boom, you throw in this Emperor who is basically just trying to consume all life in the galaxy just to sustain his immortality. And this villain is a far greater threat than all the villains that were in Knights of the Republic 1 and 2. Now, on Revan's side, the tragedy unfolding with the Mandalorians, or that the tragedy that did unfold, rather, it's heartbreaking. Canderous having to kill his own wife because of Revan's deception. That is really a heavy emotional toll. And it really shows the collateral damage of Revan's single-minded pursuit of getting the Sith, or trying to conquer the dark side that exists out there. And he's so focused on the big picture, the threat of the big picture, that it's sadly, and I don't even think he looks at it like this, but he's willing to shatter the trust of his allies. And the revelation that the Mandalorian Wars were instigated by the Sith Emperor using a vision of conquest to manipulate Mandalore the Great, like I said, it effectively recontextualizes or retcons the entire motivation behind the war and the video games and stuff. It means that Revan and Malak weren't just falling to the dark side out of pride, out of hubris. They were reacting to a puppet master who had already set the board up against them. The fact that Revan finds the Datacron from Lord Dramath, the Emperor's own father, I mean, you really got to trip off that, is such a brilliant narrative device. It ties everything together historically, not just geographically, with all the paths leading to Nathema. And I cannot praise this book enough. It's absolutely epic, and I absolutely love it. So I just wanted to break that down right quick. Now, while leaving Nathema, Scourge and Darth Neris see Revan's ship arrive, and they attack. Now, Revan ultimately ends up crashing on the planet Nathema, and he is rendered unconscious. Now, Neris recognizes him as Revan and says that he and Malak were captured by the Sith when they accidentally discovered Dromun Cass, and he was sentenced to death by the Emperor, but couldn't have escaped unless the Emperor allowed it. Now, this kind of is the point in the story where Mitra is inserted as the third character. So like I said at the beginning, or in the introduction to this review, this book is kind of split three ways among three characters: Revan, Scourge, and Mitra. Now, up to this point, it's just been going back and forth between Scourge and Revan. Well, now that Revan is unconscious and captured by the Sith, captured by Neris and Scourge, now Mitra comes into the story. But it's important to note that even though Revan has been captured by the Sith, by Neris and Scourge, he's being resistant to their torture and interrogation. And Darth Neris believes that the Emperor wiped Revan's memories and used him as a puppet. But somehow Revan was able to break the Emperor's manipulation. And Darth Neris wants to keep Revan alive in order to learn how he broke free from the Emperor's manipulation, so she can use that power to free all his servants and overthrow them. Because you have to remember that the goal for Darth Neris is to overthrow the Emperor. Her and the other Dark Council members who are separatists. So nearly 4 years pass. And that was kind of shocking to me at this point in the story, that we have this epic time jump. And a part of me felt like, oh no, man, like Revan, is being tortured and interrogated for 4 years. Wow. I mean that was kind of risky. And like I said, my only criticism of this book might have been not to call it Revan. Maybe call it Knights of the Republic 3. Because again, the main characters are split 3 ways: Revan, Scourge, and Mitra. So it's a little misleading to come into this book thinking that it's all about Revan, in other words. But yes, nearly 4 years pass, and during these 4 years, it's extremely important to note that the events of Knights of the Republic 2 come to pass during these 4 years. Rogue Jedi left the Jedi Order, led by Kreia, who became Darth Traya. And forgive me if I say these Star Wars names incorrectly. I've always sucked at enunciating these Star Wars names. Now, these rogue Jedi that left the Jedi Order called themselves the Sith after the pure blood Sith species. They killed tens of thousands of Jedi, and it was Mitra who ultimately defeated Darth Traya with Candaris's help. Now Mitra and Revan's droid T3, now T3 from Knights of the Republic, classic little character right there, they basically go and visit Bastila. So again, keep in mind that Bastila, for 4 years, she doesn't know what happened to her husband. And that's kind of sad because she obviously had her child, and the child never met the father, never met Revan. So Mitra and T3 visit Bastila. T3 has also been looking for Bastila for 3 years and was present when Revan went to Nathema and Rakite. So I probably should have said that way back in the beginning of this review that T3 has been accompanying Revan this whole time, okay? So T3 has been there this whole time with Revan. And when Revan crashed on Nathema, T3 was able to go unnoticed by Scourge and Darth Neris and basically repair the ship on its own and go back to the Republic. And this whole time, T3 has been looking for Bastila for 3 years. And T3 saw Scourge take Revan while T3 was hiding. And when T3 visits Bastila, T3 shows a recording that shows a pure blood Sith. And what this means is that the pure blood Sith are not extinct. So this is some really important news. Apparently, another droid close to Revan from the original Knights of the Old Republic game is also looking for Revan. So Mitra and T3 go to Nathema and find Revan. Now Bastila has to stay behind and watch her son. So that kind of sucks because I'm a big fan of Bastila, and Bastila doesn't really do much in this story, but given the responsibilities that she can't run away from, being a mother to her son, it's understandable. But before they leave, Bastila gives Mitra Revan's mask and a photo of their child, their son. Now Mitra reveals that she had to cut herself off from the Force in order to survive the mass shadow generator that she utilized to wipe out the Mandalorians. So that's why, in the beginning of the story, that's why Revan couldn't sense her in the Force. So we know that now. And over time, over this 4 years, or during the events of the Knights of the Republic 2 game, the Force slowly came back to her over time. On Nathema, Mitra and T3 extract data files that tell the story of Lord Vitiate, the Emperor, and what he did to the planet and how he was looking for Dromund Kaas, homeworld of the Sith purebloods. Mitra decides to go there in hopes of possibly finding Revan. Now, jumping back to Revan, after 3 years of interrogation, Scourge and Revan have forged a relationship of respect, which is fascinating. Revan is learning about Neris's fight against the Emperor, and Scourge wants to learn more about the Force. Revan tries to plant a seed in Scourge's mind in order to help him escape. And Revan does this by telling him a vision of Mitra coming to rescue him. Somebody coming to rescue him. And what ultimately happens is Mitra arrives on Dromund Kaas, and in order to basically navigate and find her way around and survive, she sells gems to a jeweler who sets her up with a meeting with Setchel, who is Darth Neris's slicer or servant, right? The data slicer. Now, she pays Setchel to set up a meeting with her and Scourge using a holo recording from T3 to identify Scourge. Now, Scourge and a couple of Sith soldiers try to ambush Mitra, and she defeats Murtaugh and the other Sith soldiers and reveals that she is a Jedi. And as a result of this, Scourge is more amazed than anything. And the reason why Scourge is amazed is because it illustrates that the vision that Revan had was true. Because you have to remember, Revan told Scourge that he is going to be rescued by Mitra or by a Jedi. And then the vision came true. And this is what basically, this incentivizes Scourge to learn more from Revan, to want to help Revan. Because he feels like the Jedi or the Force can show people visions. And Scourge wants that power. He wants the power to have premonitions and visions in the Force and being able to foretell the future. So that's what fascinates Scourge with Revan. Scourge is amazed that Revan's vision was true. And Scourge offers to free Revan and to work together with Mitra to stop the Emperor from attacking the Republic and destroying the Sith. So Scourge confronts Setchel and demands all the data files implicating Darth Neris in the conspiracy against the Emperor. And Scourge finally gets to do what he's always wanted to Setchel, and that's murder him. He breaks the little bastard's neck. And Scourge will no longer wait for Darth Neris to overthrow the Emperor. So that's another thing that Scourge is really frustrated with. You have to remember, 4 years have passed and Darth Neris hasn't enacted her plan. The Dark Council members who are separatists haven't enacted their plan to stop the Emperor. So Scourge at this point is like, this is a bunch of bullshit. I can't wait anymore. I gotta take it upon myself to stop the Emperor. So Scourge is no longer going to wait for Neris and the other Dark Council members to overthrow the Emperor. He feels that Neris and the other members of the Dark Council are too preoccupied with plotting against each other. So Scourge gives the data files implicating Darth Neris to Mitra as proof of the conspiracy against the Emperor. And she agrees to work with Scourge if they free Revan. So the plan is this. Scourge is going to use the Emperor as a distraction to free Revan, who is now in the company of Neris. So Scourge goes to meet with the Emperor, who he can corroborate as whose eyes are black as the void. So he confirms this because this is Scourge's first time meeting the Emperor, and he sees that his eyes are as black as an endless void, and his voice sounds like a choir of lost souls trapped in his corporeal form. And when I hear that, or when I read that rather, sounds like a choir of lost souls. It kind of reminded me of the Night Sisters, the Mother Talzin of the Night Sisters, how her voice was like a choir of dark souls or lost souls. So Scourge tells the Emperor that Darth Neris is part of the Separatist plot to overthrow him. And while the Emperor investigates Neris, Scourge has Mitra pretend to be his slave in order to infiltrate Darth Neris' stronghold. And it is at this point in the story that the Emperor's forces suddenly attack Neris' stronghold, and Mitra and Scourge decide to free REVAN. Now, Mitra and Scourge free REVAN, and when they give him his mask, all his forgotten memories come back to him. And REVAN faints for a little minute, temporarily. He faints at the occurrence of him getting all his memories back. Now, Darth Neris arrives, and a lightsaber battle ensues between her, Scourge, and Mitra. And Darth Neris unleashes dark side lightning on them. And all seems hopeless because Darth Neris is just infinitely more powerful than Scourge and Mitra. But all of a sudden, REVAN emerges with his mask on and absorbs all the dark side lightning, declaring that REVAN is reborn. And he destroys Darth Neris with her own dark side lightning. And this was such an epic return for REVAN. I absolutely loved it. I could totally visualize it in my mind when I was reading this scene. It was epic. Now, Scourge finds out that not only did the Emperor kill the other Separatist council members, but all of the Dark Side Council, every single one, even those loyal to him, showing his insanity or his thirst for power. Now, REVAN remembers that he and Malik came to Dromun Khas and learned that the Emperor was going to the Republic, going to invade the Republic, and they tried to stop the Emperor. However, the Emperor was far too powerful and dominated their minds and compelled them to invade the Republic. Therefore, REVAN and Malik were victims of the Emperor's mind control. However, the dark side twisted their minds, and they forgot about the Emperor's orders, and they thought that they were acting on their own accord. So, again, this recontextualizes the first Knights of the Republic game. Scourge and REVAN at this point believe that the Emperor will consume Dromun Khas like he did Nathema, and they agree that they must go after the Emperor while chaos ensues from the aftermath of the Dark Council being purged. Scourge then has a vision of their defeat, and Scourge really starts to worry because you have to remember, he just saw a vision come true. He just heard REVAN have a vision of being rescued, and then what happens? Mitra comes to rescue him. So now Scourge has this vision of them failing, and he fears dying and confers with REVAN, who says that he doesn't fear death and is willing to sacrifice himself for the greater good. But Scourge does not understand that concept whatsoever. He does not understand the concept of self-sacrifice, because you have to remember, this is the Sith we're talking about. And the Sith only understand one thing, and that's sacrificing others for personal gain. So ultimately, Mitra, Scourge, and REVAN go to the Emperor's citadel, and at the door to the throne room a guard captain recognizes Revan from the previous visit years ago when him and Malik came, and a battle ensues. Revan then all of a sudden rushes into the throne room to face the Emperor alone, while Scourge and Mitra fight the guards outside. Now Revan battles the Emperor, but the Emperor is far too powerful and nearly cooks Revan alive with dark side lightning. And the Emperor destroys T3 as T3 tries to save Revan. And I was really shocked at how hurt I was by that. T3 is like C3. It's like R2D2 rather. T3 is like R2D2 for the Knights of the Republic games. And I didn't realize how much of an affinity I had for the little guy until I read that he got destroyed, just blown to bits by the Emperor. And I was like, man, that kind of sucks, man. T3's gone. And he sacrificed himself trying to save Revan. That kind of hurt me, man. I didn't expect that. I really didn't. It's just a testament to how great these characters are and how great this story is, right? And that's why I say this book really should have been called Knights of the Republic 3, because it feels like a trilogy. Knights of the Republic 1, Knights of the Republic 2, the 2 video games, and then this book. Great trilogy right here. So, ultimately, Scourge and Mitra join Revan in the battle in the throne room. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Scourge murders Mitra, betraying her and Revan. And I was like, oh no, this has to be a ruse. Something is up here. He had to just sacrifice Mitra, but something's going to happen. He's going to team up with Revan again. Like, it had to be a sacrifice, like sacrificing a pawn or something. It couldn't be a true betrayal. It couldn't be, but it is. It is. Scourge betrays Revan and Mitra. And the Emperor nearly kills Revan, but wants him alive. Then all of a sudden, Scourge pledges his allegiance to the Emperor in hopes of being a Dark Council member now that they've all been murdered. And the Emperor makes him the Emperor's Wrath, his executioner, and promised Scourge eternal life. He undergoes the procedure, and the cost, the exchange for eternal life for Scourge is endless suffering until he can no longer feel anything at all. And it's at this point in the story where Scourge really questions whether immortality is worth it. And we kind of leave that thread hanging and open-ended and open to speculation as to whether Scourge felt it was worth it, eternal life, in exchange for endless suffering until he feels nothing ever again. Mitra is dead, and even though she is dead, she's able to keep her spirit united with Revan. And the Emperor tries to extract information about the Jedi and the Republic from his mind, while Revan tries to increase the Emperor's fear of death. So, in a way, Revan and Mitra succeeded, because the Emperor doesn't want to invade the Republic anymore. He has to rebuild the Dark Side Council and his home base. And their sacrifice, Revan and Mitra, the two pivotal characters from the Knights of the Republic video games, 1 and 2, their sacrifice brings peace to the galaxy long enough for Revan's child and the children of his generation and the grandchildren and their children's children, long enough for them to not know a life of war and suffering. And it truly is a bittersweet ending. And this ending is it's purely cerebral in the sense that it's all happening in the mind. As far as Revan kind of being in suspended animation, and because you have to remember the emperor doesn't want to kill him, so he's almost like in suspended animation, and he's battling the will of the emperor in his mind. And Mitra, her spirit's still there in corporeal form, and again, it's like cerebral. It's almost like some X-Men Professor X fighting on the astral plane kind of stuff. So even though Mitra's gone in the physical form and Revan is in prison, the battle still continues in spirit form. And initially I had to second guess. I had to be like, do I like this ending? And I can understand how somebody could not like this ending. I truly can. I can understand. But what I do like about it is, well, you have to think about Star Wars lore and Star Wars canon. There is no live happily ever after here. We know there's all types of tragedy and wars that happen after the events of this story. So there isn't going to be, so it's okay that Revan didn't defeat the Emperor forever and ever, because we know Darth Bane comes along, we know Plagueis comes along, we know Palpatine comes along, and if you care about the EU, we know the Sith come back as far as Darth Krayt, and then there's the Yuzon Vong. So it's an endless war, and I think the point here is this: it's to never give up, to never stop fighting, and that Revan and Mitra, they didn't vanquish evil from the galaxy. Evil is always going to exist. What they did was they sacrificed themselves like true heroes in order to buy peace for generations of citizens of the Republic. That is the victory. That's the ultimate victory right there. So, just to recap, and like I said, I absolutely love this story. And the second half of this book is where the narrative truly crystallizes into something epic. The concept that Revan was essentially unbreakable to the Emperor's torture, it's a testament to his sheer willpower and the unique duality of his nature, holding both the Jedi and Sith philosophies within him. The Emperor's usual tactic of memory wiping to create puppets failed, ultimately because Revan's identity was too fractured yet too resilient, simultaneously too resilient to be fully erased. And it's ironic that Darth Nearest wanted to keep him alive, not out of mercy, but to study him like a lab rat or something, and to find the key to her own freedom. She wanted to weaponize his resistance. And the timeline integration with Knights of the Old Republic 2 is absolutely brilliant, explaining that rogue Jedi who merely adopted the name of the purebloods, I mean, it's kind of like a coincidental thing. It adds so much historical weight to Darth Krayt's philosophy. And the tragedy of Mitra, the Jedi exile, having to sever herself from the Force to survive the mass shadow generator at Malachor. It's one of the most compelling concepts in Star Wars lore, in my opinion. It makes her return to the Force a slow, healing journey, paralleling Revan's recovery. So I love that. It really makes Revan and Mitra feel aligned together as characters. And T3 being the unsung hero who held the evidence all this time, and the way that he went out, man, it's touching. It's touching. And I love that T3 saw everything on Nathema and made him the ultimate keeper of secrets. And it's poetic that he's the bridge between Revan's past and his rescue. Now, the manipulation of Scourge is fascinating to read because you're seeing an evolution here. Revan playing the long game, planting the seeds of doubt and ambition in Scourge's mind over 3 years. It shows Revan's mastery of psychology and Scourge's realization that Nereus and the Council are too consumed by their petty infighting to ever pose a real threat to the Emperor. That's his awakening. And it shows that Scourge is pragmatic more than anything. And he sees that the Sith structure is a house of cards built on paranoia. The way he executes Setchel without hesitation, it shows that he's done playing around with this sniveling little weasel. He's done playing politics. And that act where he breaks his neck, he breaks that little fucker's neck, it shows that he's ready for direct action. And the detail about the Emperor's eyes being as black as the void and his voice sounding like a choir of lost souls, it's such terrifying imagery. I absolutely loved it. It reinforces the horror element that Emperor Vitiate isn't just a ruler, he's a spiritual abomination, consuming 1,000 voices. In the climax, at Nereus' stronghold, the Emperor using the separatist plot as a convenient excuse to purge the entire Dark Council in one stroke it's truly classic Machiavellian tyrant behavior. Killing two birds with one stone. And the ultimate highlight, however, is the moment where Mitra returns Revan's mask. It acts as a totem, instantly unlocking his suppressed memories and identity. Revan reborn. It was badass. There's no better term. It was absolutely badass. And once again, this book was a masterful recontextualization of the Knights of the Old Republic video games. It completely absolves Revan and Malak of the moral culpability for the Jedi Civil War by revealing they were just unwilling puppets. They were like the Manchurian candidates, if you allow me to use that analogy, right? The Manchurian Candidate, if you've ever seen that film, the original with Frank Sinatra, not the remake with Denzel Washington, but the remake with Frank Sinatra. The original with Frank Sinatra, which takes place during the Cold War, is about somebody being brainwashed by the communists, the Soviet Union, or was it the Chinese? I can't remember, but the communists, to carry out an assassination. So that's what Revan and Malak were. They were the Manchurian candidates. It frames their fall to the dark side not as a failure of character, but as a horrific side effect of the Emperor's mental domination. The fact that the dark side twisted their minds so deeply that they forgot the imperative and believed that the ambition that they were feeling was their own, it's kind of a tragic irony. It adds so much depth to their tragedy. They were victims of a violation far worse than physical torture. It was a mental violation. And the philosophical clash between Revan and Scourge regarding self-sacrifice, it's the thematic heart of the entire book, in my opinion. Revan, having been both Jedi and Sith, understands that some things are worth dying for, while Scourge, as a true product of Sith dogma, literally cannot comprehend the concept of sacrificing oneself. It's illogical to him. He can only sacrifice others for his own ends. That inability to understand altruism, it's exactly what makes the betrayal so shocking, yet perfectly in character for the Sith. Scourge's vision functioned as a self-fulfilling prophecy. His fear of dying drove him to kill Mitra to ensure his own survival, which ironically damned him to the very fate he feared. The gift of immortality the Emperor gave him, it's a curse of endless suffering, stripping away his capacity to feel anything forever. That right there is poetic justice at its finest. And then the Emperor, he is basically a cosmic horror. And again, the way he destroyed T3 was heartbreaking. It truly was heartbreaking. And the twist of Mitra's spirit remaining with Revan, it's a beautiful thing. I really felt it really was. And the final outcome, it's kind of complex in a fascinating way. Revan loses the physical battle, but he wins the psychological war. This is what I meant by the ending is it's cerebral. By planting the seed of fear of death in the Emperor's mind. A being who views himself as eternal, Revan fundamentally changes the timeline. Instead of an immediate invasion that would have possibly wiped out the Republic, or even the Sith, or just cause endless suffering and another war. Instead of that, the Emperor is forced into a defensive posture. That reprieve allows the galaxy to heal, giving Revan's child and generations after peace. It transforms Revan's captivity into martyrdom, even though he's suffering in stasis. He becomes a martyr, and it truly is a touching thing, and I absolutely loved this book. It is an A+. It is a grand slam, and I wish that I had read it sooner. And I am proud to own it. Glad I bought it to put right next to my Star Wars Old Republic book Deceived, and the Darth Bane trilogy, and Darth Plagueis. I cannot recommend this book enough. Go and get it. Don't hesitate. It is absolutely amazing. Thank you for listening to this review and in-depth analysis for REVAN. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and share. May the Force be with you. And last but not least, one love, people. Take care.